way.
But it's the playoffs.
No. No, this year's playoff predictions will not happen.
What?
No Canadian teams are in the playoffs this year, and that hasn't happened since 1970, before you or I were even born. Huh!
So you're just gonna skip doing the predictions this year? You know, the rules state that if you skip the predictions, I win the cup by default. And come on, that's almost as bad as the NHL going on strike. Again.
Wait, who made that damn rule?
That would be you.
Damn it, fine. Just roll your damn intro. I'll meet you in the studio so we can get this over and done with.
That's the spirit. Now, without further ado, let's get this rolling. That's right, here we are again for another go-around of NHL postseason action. As always, we'll get the ball rolling with the Western Conference.
First up in the Pacific Division is Anaheim and Nashville. When looking at these two teams head-to-head, this is a surprisingly tough one to call. Nashville has won 2 of the 3 games they played against Anaheim this year, outscoring the Ducks 10-7. However, the last time these two teams played each other was back on November 17th, and the Ducks have gotten much better since then, going 34-10-5 after Christmas and 6-2-2 in their last 10 games. If Pekka Rinne and the Predators' defensive core show up with their A game, then Nashville stands a pretty good chance. But right now, I feel that the rejuvenated Ducks will take this series in 6 games. Next up, we have LA against San Jose. LA has stumbled a bit heading into the playoffs, going 4-5-1 in their last 10 games, whereas San Jose has won 5 of their last 7 games. When matched against each other this year, San Jose won their regular season series 3-2 and outscored LA 18-13. The last game between these two was only a couple weeks ago, and San Jose dominated that game by a 5-2 score. However, LA has defied regular season numbers and rankings in the playoffs before, and San Jose has choked following regular season success. Though I feel I should have learned my lesson after continually betting against LA in 2012, I think this might be San Jose's time to break some trends. I'm going with San Jose in 7 games. Next up, we have the Central Division. And the first matchup there, Dallas against Minnesota. Okay, 22 points separates these two teams in the standings. Dallas went 8-2-0 in their last 10 games, and they beat Minnesota 4 out of the 5 times they played them. However, 4 of those 5 games were also decided by only a single goal, and the last game between these two clubs back on February 9th was decided in overtime. Still, despite winning 6 games in a row in late March, the Wild followed that with a 5-game losing streak to end the regular season. Though I would love to see Minnesota pull off an upset in this series, I'm going to have to give this one to Dallas in 5 games. And finally, we have St. Louis against Chicago. Since St. Louis was fighting with Dallas for the Central Division title down the final stretch of the season, they're heading into the playoffs with some force, going 8-2-0 in their last 10 games. Add into that, the Blues are also 3-2 against the Blackhawks this year, with their most recent game against Chicago this past Thursday ending in a 2-1 overtime win for St. Louis. But Chicago is still a team that has been built for deep playoff runs the past 3 seasons. Additionally, the Blackhawks did outscore St. Louis 14-13 in their regular season series, and 3 of the 5 games these clubs played against each other were decided by a single goal. Though St. Louis is hot at the moment, I think Chicago's playoff experience, not to mention their league-leading scorer Patrick Kane, will ultimately be too much for St. Louis. It will still be close, but I think Chicago is going to take this one in 6 games. What are your thoughts on the Western Conference, PK?
Let's have a look at this, shall we? I might as well, I guess I'll entertain them. After all, I want to keep the cup, so yeah. Let's have a look at these matchups and see if I can make heads or tails of them and keep the cup in Canada. Well, let's look at the first matchup. Anaheim and Nashville. Now, Nashville only walked away with 96 points. Anaheim with 103. Anaheim has pretty much come off a high from the end of the season. They've actually really turned their season around and just started to really show dominance over some of the other teams. And this is going to continue on through the playoffs. And I really think that Nashville isn't going to make it past this round. Anaheim will, and they'll probably take it in a sweep. It'll be close games, but Nashville is just going to get frustrated and they'll be making mistakes. The next matchup I have is San Jose and LA Kings. Now this one, I would love to see LA go further, but I don't think they're going to have that advantage. San Jose is going to come out hard, and they'll come out hitting pretty heavy. The Kings, still led by a great coach. Who knows, they might go far on this one, but in my personal opinion, I don't think they will. In fact, they're going to go down in 6 games to San Jose, and that's going to give San Jose the advantage to move on to the second round. The next matchup I have is Dallas versus Minnesota. Now, with this series, Dallas has owned it in the season. They've taken the series 4-1 over Minnesota, and I feel that they're probably going to do that in the playoffs too. However, Minnesota might win a couple of games, and it'll give them a little bit of a boost, but not enough to make it to the second round. So in all honesty, I think Dallas has this one, and they're going to be moving on to the second round. The next one we have is Chicago and St. Louis. Now, this series was a little bit closer. There's only 4 points in between the two teams for the season points. And honestly, I still think Chicago will overcome over St. Louis. They have the experience in the playoffs, so they will actually make it to the second round over St. Louis in about 5 games. St. Louis, even though they led the series, they're not going to lead it in the playoffs, and they'll falter.
Okay, now let's move over to the Eastern Conference. First up is the match between the Florida Panthers and the New York Islanders. Both teams have similar records in their last 10 games, though if you narrow things down a bit, Florida has won 5 of their last 6. The Islanders may have walked away the winners from the last time these two teams met this season, but that was by a single goal, and also the only time they managed to beat the Panthers this year. What will work even more against the Islanders are their injuries, specifically their goaltender Yaroslav Halak. This leaves Thomas Greiss as the starter for New York, who has a total of 40 minutes of playoff experience. If the Islanders were more healthy, they would have more of a chance, but I think they're a bit too banged up heading into the playoffs to overcome Florida. I'm going with the Panthers in 6 games for this one. Next, we have Tampa Bay against Detroit. With the way Detroit barely managed to squeak into the playoffs this year, you would think that this would be an easy first-round matchup to call. But, like the Islanders, Tampa Bay is heading into the playoffs with some key players injured. The biggest name they are down is Steve Stamkos. But aside from that, Tyler Johnson is questionable for Game 1, and Ryan Callahan will most likely just be returning from an injury for this series opener as well. Both teams were 5-5-0 in their last 10, with Detroit managing a 3-game win streak before dropping their last 2 games of the year. Tampa Bay did win the last meeting between these two clubs on March 22nd by a 6-2 score, but that was also with Stamkos in their lineup. Like last year, this one will be close, but I think if Detroit gives a good defensive performance like they did against Philly last Wednesday, then after 7 games, they will be the ones to walk away winners. Next up, we have the Metropolitan Division, and the first match there is Washington against Philadelphia. Despite Washington's ranking, they have been struggling down the stretch, going 4-3-3 in their last 10 and losing 4 of their last 5 games. Philly, on the other hand, has been in playoff mode for a few weeks now. These two teams split their regular season series 2 games each, with the Flyers winning the last match of their series on March 30th 2-1 in a shootout. Though momentum looks to be on the side of Philly, Washington's late season slump could be due to clinching a playoff spot so early and wanting to rest some of their key players. I'm going to give the Capitals the benefit of the doubt here and say that they'll win this series in 6 games. And finally, we have Pittsburgh against the New York Rangers. Pittsburgh is entering the playoffs on the tail end of a hot streak, having won 8 games in a row before losing their final game of the regular season. Even without Evgeny Malkin in the lineup, who has been sidelined since March 11th, the Penguins have shown that they should not be taken lightly. However, the big question mark for the Penguins right now is goaltending, since both Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray are listed as day-to-day and are very questionable to appear in net for this opening series. If neither are healthy in time, Pittsburgh will most likely start Jeff Zachoff, who has only played in 14 games this year. The Rangers, on the other hand, should have their star players healthy in time. So, even though Pittsburgh has beaten New York in 3 of their 4 meetings this year, I think the Rangers will take this series in 6 games. What are your thoughts on the matter, PK?
So, my first matchup I have is Florida and the New York Islanders. Wow, I didn't think I'd be saying New York Islanders for the playoffs. And 100 points, too. I mean, that's actually a really good season for them. That's really good compared to many other years that they've done this. However, Florida has been riding a high. Luongo's happy. He's made it into the playoffs again. And you've got some great players on Florida. For some strange reason, they seem to mesh quite well. But I really think that Florida's going to take it to the Islanders, and they're going to advance to the next round. And in all honesty, sorry Islanders, you're going to be swept. And that leaves us with Tampa Bay Lightning versus Detroit Red Wings. Now, everyone knows my hatred for Detroit. And if you don't, just look at the previous videos. I have got a hatred for Detroit. And this is no exception. I mean, you have a look at the stats between these guys, and it's just the standings for Detroit. They fluked. They absolutely fluked getting into the playoffs. They are the only team aside from Philadelphia with a negative goals for and against record. Detroit has minus 13 goals against, whereas Philadelphia only has minus 4. So they're up there, but not by that much. I mean, Boston, they could have made it in the playoffs, but they didn't. They lost it. And unfortunately, it hurt them a lot. Because the regular season wins, they lost by 1. And they had a plus 10 goals for and against differential. So Detroit flukily went in there. And in all honesty, it's going to show. Because Tampa Bay is going to come in, they're going to destroy them in 5 games, and they're going to make it to the next round. That's an easy pick for those two. Even though the series is tied at 2, Detroit, I don't even think is going to make it past the first round. On the other side, I have Washington versus Philly. Oh, this is going to be a horrible bloodbath. Philly is a tough team. Like, these guys play with a lot of just hard-hitting hockey. They always have. That's what Philly's style is. But the control of the Capitals is going to pretty much knock Philly out in the first round. It's going to take 6 games, but it'll knock them out in the first round. With Washington's 120 points for the season, which is absolutely amazing, they are really going to show that they are a very tough contender for the Stanley Cup in the first round. And that brings us to the other side of this matchup, which will be the Rangers and Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh has been known to falter in the playoffs, and this again is going to happen. These guys, I swear, have some sort of curse on them. So we're going to have Pittsburgh being knocked out in 5 games by the Rangers. These guys are going to come in, they're going to show who's dominant, and they're going to really, really take it to them on the ice. I got a feeling that these guys will make it to the second round. So Rangers are going to make it. Pittsburgh, going golfing.
Okay, now let's shift our focus from the first round to the rest of the postseason. Based on my first round predictions, in the West we would have Anaheim against San Jose and Dallas against Chicago. Between Anaheim and San Jose, I think it'll be close. Most of the games between these two this year were decided by just 1 goal, and I think San Jose will have a good amount of confidence after the first round. I'm going with San Jose in 7 games. Then, between Dallas and Chicago, I think after another close series, the Stars will end the Blackhawks' hopes of a repeat in 7 games. This will set up a Western final between San Jose and Dallas. Dallas only had a slight advantage in the regular season series against San Jose, but I think after outdoing LA and then Anaheim, it'll be pretty hard to put the Sharks down. This sounds crazy, but I'm picking San Jose in 6 games. Now, over in the East, we'll have Florida against Detroit and Washington against the Rangers. With Florida and Detroit, I think the Red Wings will be hurting after their series with Tampa, and will have trouble keeping up with the Panthers. It'll be a 6-game series, but I think Florida will win this one. Next is the Capitals and the Rangers. Like San Jose in the West, I feel this is Washington's year to silence criticisms of their postseason performances. They'll be faster and hungrier than New York and will advance after 6 games. This leads to an Eastern final between Florida and Washington, and here I don't think the Panthers will have the firepower to stop the Capitals. This one will be a 5-game series, and Washington will emerge as the Eastern Conference champs. And at long last, we have a Stanley Cup Final Series between San Jose and Washington. These two have only played each other twice this year, and San Jose won both games, outscoring Washington 10-2. But after 3 rounds of playoffs, it will not be as one-sided. It'll be back and forth, but in the end, Washington will emerge with their club's first ever Stanley Cup following a 6-game series. What are your thoughts, PK?
Now, for the second round of the West, we have Anaheim and San Jose. San Jose is going to be their stopping point right there. Anaheim actually is going to come out of this one on top in about 5 games. The good thing about this series is that they don't have to travel far back and forth. They're pretty much very close together. They're in California, so the travel time won't kill them, and it'll actually be decent for these two. So it's going to be a close series game, or close series match. But honestly, Anaheim is going to come through this, and they'll be going on to the conference finals. Now, we have Dallas versus Chicago. Now, the cockiness of Chicago is really going to hurt them in the second round. Dallas, they've been very structured. They've played a very, very humble game. They play pretty much one game at a time, and they've actually done really well for themselves. Now, I think that's going to carry on through the second round. They're going to take Chicago out on this one, probably about 5 games, and they'll be taking it to the conference finals. Now, the conference finals, and that's going to be between Dallas and Anaheim. Now, I want to say Dallas is going to come through, but I don't see it happening. I think they're going to run out of steam on this one. They've played really well through the season, and the first 2 rounds of the playoffs they'll be playing really well. But I got a feeling that there's going to be probably some injuries with these guys. They're going to have some issues, and I think Anaheim's going to pretty much basically dominate in the conference finals. Dallas might win 1 or possibly 2 games, but I don't think it's going to go that. I don't think it's going to go to 7 games. Anaheim's going to come out on top, and you'll be seeing them as the winners of the West, playing for the Stanley Cup. Now, that brings us to the East before we even look at the Stanley Cup Finals. So for the second round for the East, we've got Tampa Bay, Lightning, and Florida. Now, Florida is actually going to come out and pretty much take care of business right from the get-go. They're not going to fool around anymore. Tampa Bay's going to get caught with a lot of their traps. Now, if Luongo can keep his goaltending up, which we've known time and time again can be hit, can be missed, if he keeps it up, they can go on to the finals. And they probably will. I've got a feeling that it'll be Florida going to the finals in 5 games. Now, we've got the Rangers and Washington. Washington is pretty much jinxed. Plain and simple. That's the only way I can explain it. They're not going to make it past the second round. Their dynasty or very, very favorable run for the Cup is going to come to an end at the second round. They're going to be taken out by the Rangers in 5 games. Washington just can't do it in the playoffs. I have never seen them really make it that far, and I don't think they're going to make it that far this year again. If they do, congratulations, but I think you've used all your bag of tricks in the regular season. Which now leaves us with the conference finals between the Rangers and Florida. Florida's riding high, Rangers are riding high. Rangers have the advantage for pretty much how their style of play, but Florida has the points. And I think Florida is pretty much going to be coming through in this one. This one's going to be a battle back and forth for 7 games, but Florida's going to come out. There's going to be a couple of overtimes, and they're just going to make sure that the Rangers know who they are. So yeah, Florida is making it to the Stanley Cup Finals. And that leaves us with the very final matchup between the Anaheim Ducks and the Florida Panthers. An unlikely duo that I thought I would never see in the playoff finals in a very long time. And as much as I don't want to see Luongo get past this, he won't. He won't. Him and his team are going to falter. Anaheim has got the experience. They've got the seasonal players. They've got the veterans. They've got the lines, the matchups. They've got the chemistry. And pretty much Anaheim is going to come out on top. You're going to find your 2016 Stanley Cup champions as the Anaheim Mighty, I would love to say the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, but the Anaheim Ducks, and they're going to beat Florida in 5 games. It's not going to be much of a series, and it's not going to be that exciting, but it'll be the West taking it overall once again.
And those are our respective picks for this year's playoffs. Sorry no Canadian teams made it in the playoffs this year, PK. But look on the bright side. If you win our little game, you could be what lands a cup in Canada this year.
That's right! This year I am the great Canadian hope. And rest assured, this baby is not going anywhere.
Ha! We'll see about that.